Okay folks, I've just jumped forward to page 22. Okay, we'll know a little bit more before we start about our ridgelands. So on page 22 there's a heading called Oolithic sediment. So now we're going back to our Oolithic limestone, alright? Again, we've just looked at where all the sediments come from, and it's mainly cryptocrystalline and skeletal, alright? Now, on page 22 we talk about Oolithic sediment. Alright, so I just put in sedimentary rocks are formed by these sediments. Alright, so we look at oolithic in a bit more detail, because as we've said earlier in the first video, the Bahamas is made up of nearly completely oolithic sediment and oolithic limestone. Right, so as oceanic water moves onto the Bahama banks, okay, so this is where it gets very shallow, it is warmed up very quickly and precipitates a sediment called oolite, okay, which appears as a fine white sand. Again, right, the chemical composition for oolite is shock horror calcium carbonate. Okay, so again, we have our very shallow seas around the Bahamas. Look what I've added out here. Oolites need shallow seas to form. Bahama, Spanish for shallow sea. Sorry, you can't see all that. Okay, Bahama means shallow sea. All right. So when they come, where the ocean or the seas get shallow around the islands, once they flow over the Bahama banks, okay, it gets heated by the sun. We know how hot it is. As the water evaporates out, it leaves behind these little oolites, which then clump together to form our sediments. Okay, so it's a very simple little step-by-step process. I'll show you that step-by-step process in the PowerPoint in the next video. All right, so with each incoming tide, oceanic water sweeps across the edge of the banks. Okay, so the banks is where the water gets shallow. So when you look at Bahamas from space, you see that turquoise blue color because the water is so shallow, okay? And it's immediately warmed, usually by about 3 degrees Celsius. All right, this is enough to cause calcium carbonate, all right, to be deposited wherever the conditions exist. So when that calcium carbonate is deposited, all right, the oolithic or oolites are deposited as well to create sediment. All right. So actually, seawater in the tropics is almost saturated with this calcium carbonate. Alright, here we have it up here. So only a small increase in temperature is enough to precipitate it out. Alright, so as the seas get shallow, they're easier to evaporate. The sunlight can penetrate deeper. As the water evaporates, these sediments are precipitated out, okay, and filtered to the bottom. Okay, so let's have a little look at how this happens, or how they then clump together. Okay, just quickly on the top of page 24. Alright, that's what ooides look like that make up the oolithic grains. Okay, so they're very small, very circular little grains like that. Okay, that's why our sand is so fine. They can also be found in different clumpings or shapes, which we'll look at briefly now. Okay, so on page 25 of Bahamian landscapes, alright, we can see the different sediments then that make up our groupings in the Bahamas. Okay, you've got type of sediment found in the Bahama banks, and you got A to G. Okay, we're really just going to look at A to E. It's got skeletal, oolithic, paletal, grapestone, and lumps. So skeletal looks like this. Oolithic, you can see how small and fine it is. Pellets are essentially clumpings together of these, and then grapestones and lumps are similar. Okay, so it's mainly about the size. Okay, so oolithic taken from sand dune, these are the finest little grains. Okay, if you look at paletal, the pellets are the smaller oval grains like this. Okay, a little bit different. And then grapestones and lumps, these are grains that have been cemented or held together. Okay, don't get too hung up on knowing those off by heart. Alright, but this is the kind of stuff we're working with here. Mainly are oolithic, alright, and it comes from what we've just talked about. Okay, that's finished with the sediments. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to skip over and start looking at our ridgelands. Okay, that'll take a little bit of time, and again, you need to highlight and underline, and then we look quickly at a PowerPoint. Alright, okay, so ridgelands. Alright, we're going to look at ridgelands, rocklands, wetlands, and coastlands. Okay, we've looked at how the Bahamas form. Now we're going to break down the 4 main types of landscape we find here. Alright, we are going to start off with the ridgeland landscape. Okay, so we are on page 61 of Bahamian landscapes. So let's move down the page a bit. So first of all, the ridgeland and rocklands are primary landscapes. These are the first ones. Okay, essentially ridgelands are highland, rocklands are lowlands. The wetlands and coastlands can be considered secondary types because they are in fact formed where the primary are either flooded or reach the sea. So wetlands and coastlands are kind of secondary landscapes. You can draw a little line between if you want. Now, I've underlined and highlighted the next because it's very important, okay? Within each of these landscapes, we will also find distinctive features, all right, usually unique to that landscape. These are the landforms which will also be described. Now, so within each of these 4 types of landscape, there are distinct features, okay, and they are called landforms. So you find landforms within a landscape. Okay, so we're going to do ridgelands now. All right, very, very straightforward, simple stuff. Okay, so the ridgeland landscape, the highlands. Ridgelands are always high. Think back to our mapping skills when we are at the top of a ridge. Okay, so the higher ridges nearly always exceed 30 meters in height, about 100 feet. But only on Cat Island is 60 meters exceeded. Okay, so Cat Island has the highest ridgeland. I think it's 201 feet. Okay, so only one island has no ridge over 15 meters in height. So the Bimini's is actually the lowest land that we have in the Bahamas. Okay, there's no real ridgeland there at all. And Cat Island holds the highest ridgeland, which is just over 200 feet. Okay, on to page 62. Now there's 2 pictures on these pages, on page 62 and 63. Okay, on 62 you got San Salvador. Okay, the dark areas on the map, if you look at the key, the dark areas are the ridgelands and the blue areas are all lakes and creeks. Same again on page 63. There's a map of, I believe, Long Island, I apologize. And again, the dark areas are the ridges. Okay, so I won't look at those here. I've got them in the PowerPoint, but just to be aware of those both. Now, very quickly, not all ridges run in a straight line. They're often curved in shape, and we'll explain why that is in just a moment, okay? A striking example of the way in which ridges developed. Now, what you can do is you can add form above that word developed, okay? Is from sand dunes, okay? Is to be seen on Long Island. So ridgelands actually form from sand dunes built up over time. Again, we'll make a note about that in just a few minutes, okay? Now, again, you don't need to know this till grade 11, this little bit, but 2 of the typical dunes that form are known as sipes, okay? They're kind of long, wobbly shapes. And then crescent dunes known as barchans. Okay, so let's skip on to the next page. Okay, known as barchans. Now, all you need to know is that ridgelands, the highlands, are formed by sand dunes which have over time layered up and become very, very hard, solid rock. Right? Now, so what you have is some of these sand dunes are in a crescent horseshoe shape and some are in a kind of a long, straight, narrow shape. So if we do look at our map on page 63, okay, the ones with a B, the B stands for the barchan, the crescent shape, so you can actually see the way it hooks around like that, or the way this one hooks around like that. So you can actually see the shape of the barchan sand dune, where there's a horseshoe shape and it's layered up and up over time. Okay, the ones with S stands for safe, so they're much more straight. This long one, in fact, again, would be kind of a safe shape. You often find ridgelands as well form beside the ocean, okay, because of where the sand dunes would have formed on the beach or the coast beside the ocean. So a lot of islands, this one, Long Island for example, and we look at New Providence in a little bit, have these long coastal ridgelands.